I got the Boston Celtics going to the finals.
I got them winning the all.
It's time to represent your city. Put your hands up. Cali, you know we do it for Boston. Hey, ain't nobody gonna like Boston. Yeah, hey. Can't nobody do it like Boston. Where the legends get made, where the banners get raised, bright lights, big stage. Boston. All the fire we bring in a city full of rings, it's a beautiful thing out in Boston. And you ain't hard like that. You don't put it on the line with your squad like that. That's right, Boston. All we do is win like cigars in the gym, and we at it again. I say, Beantown, what's up? What's up? 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 Feel the energy shift, now we jumping at the gym. Represent, showing out how we ball above the rim. Larry Legend, 86, to the truth in 08. Cement your name with the all-time greats. So banner 18 in the Raptors. Celtic green, only green that matters. It's about that time. Ain't another city that's louder than mine. Always gonna shine with the game on the line. What you think was gonna happen, man? That's how we do it in Boston. Ain't nobody gonna like Boston. Yeah. Ain't nobody do it like Boston.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Dynasty Proud podcast. My name is Jason. That's Alex. Alex, what's going on?
Great time to be a Celtics fan right now.
I'm ready for the second round. We did quick work of the Heat. Honestly, we stomped them. Obviously, the Heat. We all know they were undermanned, whatnot, missing Butler. Jaime Jaquez, I think, was injured a little bit throughout the series. He missed the last game. And so we made quick work of them. What do you think of the series?
I think we took care of business. It was good to see them close it out when they should. Obviously, you would have liked a sweep. I don't think we anticipated the Heat having a historic all-time shooting performance, which is literally what it took for them to win a game. Every other game, we were up at least 30 points. So I think we took care of business. We did what we needed to do. We didn't come out completely unscathed, which we'll get into with Porzingis. But overall, from a basketball standpoint, it's about what you expected and hoped from the Celtics in that first round series.
So I do want to mention one thing, just to get your quick take. Obviously, no Tony Brothers legacy game in this series. We avoided them altogether. How did you like the refs in this series?
I don't think they played a huge role, which is what you'd like to see. Like, obviously, 9 a.m. game days, I'm on that ref assignment page with my heart beating fast, just hoping not to see, Tony Brothers. But I felt like this being a first-round series, especially with the Heat being undermanned, the NBA didn't feel the need to burn him in this series. They may not even need him in the next series. He may get one game, but I don't think he should really come into play. Where you really worry about him is against a team which we won't see, like the Bucks, the Sixers, teams that have bigs where they're just going to get you into foul trouble, and then him just, taking the bait every single time. So it's inevitable we're going to get him at some point, and as you go round to round, they narrow down the refs, and somehow he has something over the league where he's going to keep getting those games. So we're going to get plenty of Tony Brothers the further we move along in these playoffs. But I really didn't have an issue with the refs. None of the games were close. The only game that was close was the Heat aberration shooting game, and that really wasn't, the refs didn't really play a factor into that because the Heat just couldn't miss. But I didn't have an issue with the refs. What about you?
I didn't have an issue with the refs either, but just to your point on, the Heat legacy shooting night. I mean, that's what I was worried about going into a series versus the Heat, was them coming out and Caleb Martin going 4 for 5, Jaime Jaquez going, 6 for 8, Duncan Robinson, Kevin Love turning back the clock. Like, that's what I was worried about in this series with the Heat, is these guys just figuring out how to shoot again. And then we got to have a 3-point contest back and forth, because that's honestly what the game would have, been if, those two teams get into it when they shoot. But I like that we took care of business. I like that we didn't waste a game 5, and we took it to them, and we pretty much ended their season, unlike the Bruins right now. They can't figure out how to end Toronto, which is so aggravating to see. But it's nice that the Celtics, they didn't play with their food, and they beat them.
Yeah, the Heat didn't have the horses to get into that type of battle against us. They said it was a one-off in game 2. They made 23 threes in game 2 and made 21 the rest of the series. A lot of that was Celtics defense closing out on shooters. A lot of that is the Heat just aren't a good shooting team. Even with Jimmy Butler, he wasn't changing their 3-point shooting. So, you did what you had to do. You took care of business. Thankful that I'm not a big hockey guy, because the Bruins seem to be a very frustrating team if you live and die by them. But that we have our own podcast for that, so they can deal with them. But
Yeah, that is
yeah, we took care of business. We didn't extend the series. That was the fear going into Game 5. It's like I said before Game 3, the most on-brand thing for the Celtics, given the past few years, would be to romp them in Games 3 and 4 in Miami and to blow Game 5 at home. And they came right out of the gates firing. God bless Derek White. He lifetime contract. Like that guy was the best player in this series for either team. He just something to get like if I was a Heat fan, I'd be sick over it. Like he just kills them. He changes everything for us. When he's hitting shots, you can't beat this team. So it's just the floor spacing we have all around, and he's just not just a shooter. Like he's an elite defender as well. He may be the best on-ball defender in the NBA, and if he's not, Drew Holiday is. He's a shot blocking guard. It's just very thankful to have him. He's a big time playoff performer, which he's shown for 2 straight postseasons now. Actually, even in the finals against Golden State, like he had a few big shots at the end of that Game 1. So the team's looking good.
So one of the things that I worry about with Derek White going off in the playoffs is, don't you think this is going to raise his value, like his money value here, to the point where, like, obviously the Celtics, they're paying a lot of guys, right? Can you afford to give, like, say Derek White has the shooting continues throughout the playoffs, and let's say they win the finals, right? They win the whole thing. His value is going to go up. Is Derek White going to command something in like the 170 range, like the 180? Like, is he going to push for max dollars, or after this whole thing is done with what he's done in the postseason, is he going to settle for a team-friendly deal? That's what I'm worried about, that he's going to price himself out of staying in Boston.
I think you can't afford to not pay him, to not have him on this team. You're so far over the luxury tax and in the second apron that if you don't re-sign Derek White, you don't have one additional dollar to spend. It's the owner's money as far as taxes. So they've clearly shown a commitment to this team. They're willing to spend. They're willing to, put us in contention. Whether we win the finals or not, I don't think Derek White's a guy you can afford to lose. Now, he may not sign this summer. He still has another year. He may go the free agency route and still come back here. We can still offer him the most amount of money. Regardless of how over the tax we are, we can still pay him. So I think you would keep him. You have Drew Holiday's contract, which is movable down the road if they want to move him. As big as the number sounds, it's still $30 million. Porzingis, if you wanted to go that route, you could still move that contract. Jaylen Brown's a contract you can move. So I don't think, like, Derek White's a guy you have to keep. He's like a part of this culture, Celtics culture. But I mean, he's the guy, he's such a fit for this team with everything he does on both ends of the floor. I don't think you can afford to lose him. So you give him the max amount that he wants. Like, you can't lose him to somebody else because you weren't willing to pony up the money for him. So, and even if it gets into a situation where we're so far over the books, if you wanted to trade him, you'll get value back for him. Like Drew Holiday, you may not get the same value back. Jaylen Brown, even though, he's a great player, top 15, top 20 player in the league, just due to the contract, you may not get the value that you want. Derek White, you're going to get value back for. Even if you're paying him $40 million a year, like, he's a fit anywhere he goes. He doesn't have an ego. He's not like, a ball hog with, he's not an isolation type player. He just is a perfect team fit. So you'll get assets back for him. So I can't think of any reason to not pay him. If you want to move him down the road, you'll always be able to.
No, I agree. I think what you do is you give him the money he wants, and then you worry about everything else later. You worry about, if you want to move Drew, or if it's Kristaps, or whatever the case may be. But I think you do give Derek White the money because he's proven that he can be, if you need him to, he can be your second best scorer on any given night. He drops, I think,
Or
what is
first.
38 or first, yes, or first. Well, I assume Tatum would be 1, he'd be 2, but whatever, same thing. But as you mentioned earlier, we did not escape this series cleanly. Kristaps has a right calf strain, is what I'm going to call it, but it's like a soreless strain. It's what Giannis has. He's been out 3 weeks, still hasn't been able to come back. Well, he's not coming back now because the Bucks are out. This is where things get tricky because calves are tough, because if you don't treat the calf strain right, you can tear your Achilles, like KD did when he was when he was in the finals, I believe. What was it? When he was with the Warriors, right?
Yeah, against Toronto.
Against the Raptors. So you got to be cautious with these. The Celtics, obviously, we don't know a grade on the strain. We don't know too much. We know it's a 1 to 3 week general timeline, depending on how he feels and whatnot. So just give me your thoughts on his injury and if you think this is going to keep him out a good amount of time here.
So everybody's now aware of a soleus, which I don't think anybody knew what that was, a week or two ago. But he seemed in good spirits, even the night it happened. He was, he says like, we'll be back. There isn't a specific timeline, but it sounds like it definitely could have been worse. Like I was at game 4, so I just saw him hobbling off, and I go on my phone, and you would have thought he got shot. Like everybody was like, oh, that is the Achilles. He's done. You won't see him again. This is why you couldn't trade for it. Like, it was just end of the world, which is everybody's natural reaction. At the game, I didn't have that because I didn't really see what happened. I saw him limping, but the fact that it like seems like it's week to week, that he'll miss several games, like this is not going to be considered end of the season for him, is a great thing. But you need to be cautious as well. We do have the benefit of the added rest, the fact that you don't want to take any team lightly, but I'd say we're fortunate for the matches that we will have in the second round that we're so good we should still be able to get through those teams in 5 or 6, max, even without him. So that'll add, additional time that we can allow him to rest. If the conference final starts the 21st or 22nd, which is when it's scheduled to be, the move-up date could be a day or two earlier. That's 3 weeks-ish of rest for him, which is kind of on the later end of this timeline. So you can be cautious with him. You should be able to win this round without him. I think they still could win the conference finals without him. I'd like to have him back by then, even if you don't need him for that. You don't want him even to come off a month of not playing in games and go straight into NBA finals level intensity basketball. So you do want to get him reps. I even floated this idea with some other Celtics fans. I'm like, what if he came off the bench when he comes back, because then he comes off the bench, he plays like 20, 25 minutes, like in a second unit level thing where he may still close the games, but like then he's working his way back in a second unit. He'll really be dominant. He could be more of a point of emphasis on offense as well. And another thing people were saying is like, oh, if you don't have him back, you have no shot against, Jokic. But here's the thing is like, he wasn't really going to be the Jokic defender anyway. It's just like he wasn't going to be the Giannis or the Embiid defender. That was going to be Horford. Now he'll be on the floor a lot more than Horford will be. But even in the regular season matchups, Jokic dominated him when Jokic was on offense. But on the other end of the floor, he spaced the floor, forced Jokic out, which allows additional offensive rebound opportunities for the Celtics. So I think they do need to be cautious. This is a large long-term investment beyond this year. If you bring him back too soon and he hurts his Achilles and he's out for all of next year, that impacts the Celtics ceiling for next year. So I probably trust the team doctors more than I should, given, the history of Celtics injuries and maybe not always being,
Truthful.
most honest, truthful with the injuries. But I think they know what's at stake here, both for this season and long term, and they're going to make the right call. They're not going to force him back. Now, if this was the NBA Finals starting right now, I think they may bring him back sooner than he will be in this case, because this is it. Like, you're not going to just not play. Like, if he can physically play in its, pain management, then I think he would play very soon if this was the finals. But we have the luxury of having additional time, 3 weeks till the conference finals, another 2 weeks after that until the finals. So they can play this. They can play this the right way, and they should still be able to take care of business till then.
Yeah, I agree. This is such a tough thing to try to navigate, because you have to play the game of, I don't want to bring him back too early. And, you want to make sure it heals correctly so he doesn't have the same injury again. But I think the one thing that I do want is I want him back healthy for the finals. He is going to be a factor against Joker. Now, no one's going to stop Joker, right? No one's going to completely hold him to 12 points and, he's just going to have an off. He may have an off game, but his off game is normally 22 points. You're not going to be able to limit him, but I think what Kristaps does, especially against the Nuggets, is he can take Joker away from the basket and open up other lanes for other guys to score. So I think if you don't have him for the finals, that would be a tough hit. But I just want him to rat. We don't need him in round 2. I don't want to see him in round 2. We, with our talent, should be able to take care of the Cavs or Magic in round 2 without him. Now, if you're going to face the Knicks are a better team. We still should be able to take care of the Knicks without him again, right? I know Kornet, you got to rely on Kornet minutes, but Kornet actually didn't look half bad in the minutes that he got the other night. Now, I know he was playing, against guys that aren't that great. I mean, Bam's still probably what? You would say Bam's a top 20 player in the NBA? You'd say, yeah?
Top 20, 25. He actually looked pretty good on him when he was guarding him.
Yeah, exactly. And they had people saying that Kristaps didn't look too good guarding Bam. That Bam pretty much took his lunch when KP was guarding him, and Kornet did a better job. But I didn't look too big into that. Obviously, I don't know if this injury was bothering KP or not for a couple games or whatnot, and it finally just went. But when he had that injury, when he was hobbling around, it did look like an Achilles, because it's when he was like dribbling or whatnot. He was going off a screen, and when he planted his foot and went off, it looked, it's that feeling people say you tear your Achilles when somebody like kicks you, and you're like, you look back and like nobody's there, and that's kind of what it looked like. He was putting the jersey over his head, and I think that's why people were going nuts on Twitter, because those injuries, like they suck. They're just non-contact, and it's brutal. But I don't know. I think just give him round 2 off, see where he is at the start of the conference finals, and go from there.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just, you can hopefully the team plays to the level that we expect of them. So there's not any inclination of like, we're down 2-1 in the second round. It's like, oh man, should we rush him back, get him out there because we really need him? Like, if you take care of business, win the series in 5-6 max, that shouldn't even be a thought. You can let him recover the proper way and have him ready to go for the conference finals, whether that's at the start or in the middle of it.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't want him to rush him back, because it never ends up good when you rush a player back. It never. I mean, look at Rob Williams. We wanted Rob Williams all the time, and you rush him back, and he just, I think we broke him to the point where he didn't play this year for Portland, right? He played maybe 3, 4, 5 games, and then he had knee surgery again, or something like that.
He tore his other knee, so it's just sometimes it's just bad luck.
Yeah, that is true. But I do want to switch to obviously, D. White stepped up a huge in this series, shooting the absolute lights out of the ball. We talked about he scored 38 points in one of the games. I mean, he stepped up for KP and pretty much for everybody. He was like the main guy that was scoring. So I just want to get your thoughts on D. White, and if you think he can continue this throughout the playoffs.
When D. White is playing with confidence, he's like unstoppable. Like, if you just look at the change in his game, or the evolution in his game since he first arrived in Boston. Like, when he first came here, it looks like he was just trying to fit in. Like, he wasn't trying to, take away from anybody. Like, he wasn't as confident of a shooter. Like, he was still a good defender, but like, he was a role player, and that's exactly what he was. Now he's like a high level role player, like almost playing like a star. Like, he looks so confident. He's showing like he's pulling up on a fast break, shooting like he's like taking, step backs. Like, he just looks like a completely different player. Like, this D. White is like, I wonder if he even has another level to go to. Like, he's just entering his prime. Like, he's still in his 20s, like he's not an old player. So there may be another level he can reach. And especially the way the Heat were guarding us, like, everyone was like getting on Tatum, was like, oh, he only took X amount of shots, or like he only had so many points. I'm like, the Heat were doubling and triple teaming him. Like, they were playing a zone that was like forcing him, like, where he couldn't really go anywhere. So would you prefer Tatum to just, shoot over 3 players, or drive into, like a nest down low and lose the ball? Like, no, you didn't make the right basketball read. And if they're going to guard him like that, and Spo wasn't going to make any adjustments to, really trap D. White at all, then like that was the right basketball play. And, Derek White made them pay. So if the Cavs or Magic want to try the same thing, like, Jason Tatum's far enough in his career where he's an unselfish player. He will make the right play. And, as long as guys like Derek White are hitting shots, it's just going to kill him.
In the last 2 games of this playoff series, he shot over 50% from the 3-point line and 80% from the free throw line, and overall 61.5%, which is just outrageous, just completely outrageous for him. And I think if you can keep getting this type of play throughout the whole playoffs, it's going to be tough for any team to beat them, even in whatever Western Conference team comes out, because if all 5 of these guys are roaring and they're scoring and everybody's making shots, again, it's the Celtics to lose right now. I mean, if Derek White is going to do this, it's going to be tough for anybody to stop us at this point.
No, and it's like equal opportunity offense. Like, you look at some of these other teams, if their stars aren't, if they're not hitting shots, if they're not aggressive, then that team has no shot. Like the Celtics, it's like, it's team basketball. It's not me basketball. They're all veterans. Even though they're young, they're veterans. They've been through the ringer and the grind of the postseason before. Like, they're going to do whatever it takes to win. They don't care about personal accolades at this point. It's just, stacking up victories and moving on. So I love the way that they're playing, and especially defensively. Defensively is where they really took over in the last round. Like, outside of the one fluke shooting game for Miami got held under 90 points in 3 of the games and under 100 points in all 4 of them. So, like, defense, a lot of that is Miami just doesn't have good shooters. They're not a good scoring team. But, like, we close out on 3-pointers, and, like, that's a big thing we're going to have to do, because some of the times the Celtics, which I still never understood the drop coverage that Ime Udoka, for all the flack that Joe Mazzulla gets, like, Ime Udoka was doing drop coverage on Steph Curry in the finals. Like, so, yeah, some teams are not great shooting teams. You may think that will work, but, like, you have to adjust when the players are hitting their shots. And I think that was a big adjustment from Missoula, to his credit, going into game 3. And Al Horford even spoke to it like, we have a game plan, not like Kevin Love's game plan they had for game 4, which was just to injure us. Like, strategy wise, to limit their good shots. Like, yeah, teams are gonna hit tough shots, especially if we get Cleveland. They have some big time shot makers on that team, so you just can't let it get to you. But if you just have the right habits and keep playing the right way, like, they're more talented in these teams. And now if we're more focused and mentally tough, I don't see how either of them could beat us.
Yeah. So, I mean, with your point right there, we're going to roll into our next topic, which is who we want to see more in the next round, in round 2, Cavs or Magic. Right now, the Cavs are up 3-2, but it moves to Orlando tonight. And the Cavs have looked horrific in Orlando the first 2 games. So you'd have to imagine if that trend continues, there will be a game 7, I believe, Sunday, game 7 for.
It would be Sunday, which would push our start date for game 1 of the second round to Tuesday night.
So, like I said, I've told you before on text, I don't care who we get in any of these rounds in the East, because we can literally beat anybody. But if I had to pick, obviously it'd be the Magic, just because I think the Cavs have more scoring threats, right? Garland and Mitchell in the backcourt. They got Mobley and Allen in the front court, and then they got LeVert and Okoro and Strus and LeVert, all capable guys who can score and whatnot, but obviously not to the level of our team. I think it would be more of a, it's tough. Like, you have to try against everybody, but it's like you'd have to, put in more of an effort to beat the Cavs than you would. I just think the Magic are too young. Obviously, they have Paolo Banchero and Suggs and Wendell Carter and Wagner and all them. But if they face the Magic, it'd be a sweep, 4-game. Cavs, I think it'd be 5 games. I think the Cavs would steal 1 at home for them. But yeah, who do you like?
So I've gone back and forth in this. I think the general sentiment is people would rather Orlando for some of the reasons that you mentioned. They are a young, inexperienced team. Offensively, they are very challenged. Outside of Paulo, they don't really have a lot of shot creators or like knockdown shooters. They can get hot for a game like Miami did in game 2, but that's not a team that's going to ever really outscore you. I think compared to Orlando, they are a tougher team though. They're a bigger team, so they will challenge you defensively. Like, they're going to make you take tougher shots. But they don't really have the horses on the other end to be able to score with you. So outside of Banchero, I guess maybe a Wagner will have a good game, but like, they just don't have the scoring punch. So that part of it, and I'd love to go up to Orlando for a couple games, but it is a young team. They are inexperienced. They're kind of almost like the Heat were without Jimmy Butler, whereas like they have, a lot of guys that play hard, that are very capable defenders. They just don't have a lot of scoring options, except without Spoelstra at the helm. They have a younger coach. So that would be the general pick. I will say about the Cleveland, though, I think Cleveland's a softer team. Now, they do have the higher ceiling. They're a much more talented team than Orlando. But look at their backcourt defense with Donovan Mitchell and with Darius Garland. Like, that is going to be a very big weakness for them as far as keeping us in front of them. Now, they do have rim protectors at the rim with Jared Allen and with Mobley, but I just think that team, they're not going to be able to defend us over the course of a series. Now, they do have guys that can take over a game in Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. Max Strus could even get hot. I mean, we've seen that in past Eastern Conference Finals, but I think they could be a bigger test because they can score with us. And, when their shots start falling, they may feel like they can never miss, which could actually be a preview if we somehow get Indiana in the conference finals, where it's like teams that are just like, relentless offensively. But I think Tatum will have a much better series if they play Cleveland than Orlando, just because they don't have the defenders that Orlando has. Plus, I actually think they would take Cleveland more seriously than Orlando. With Orlando, you kind of get into like, they just know they're going to beat that team, and maybe there is a slip up like early, or like, they start looking ahead, and Orlando peels off a game or two because of that. I think with Cleveland, seeing Donovan Mitchell on the other side, like, they're going to take them more seriously, and knowing that if they don't play up to their standards, that he can beat them, or the Cavs can beat the Celtics. So I will say, I don't want to predict a sweep in either, just because there are those one aberration games. Like, nobody would have thought the Heat were going to have the 4th greatest shooting night in NBA history in Boston in game 2, especially after what we saw in game 1 and what the rest of the series turned out to be. So I will say with either series, it's 5. I think the Cavs could possibly go 6 if Donovan Mitchell, really goes off. I can't see either team taking them to a game 7, even without Porzingis. I just can't see it unless the Celtics beat themselves. I don't think those other teams can beat Boston 3 times, let alone 4.
Yeah, I just think the Cavs are just a tough team to predict where like Donovan can either be really off or he can be really on and drop 40 on you. But I just think our defense can match whatever the Cavs, want to do. And with the Magic, I mean, I understand your points about like maybe they're young, they have nothing to lose, they're gonna play hard against us and whatnot. We may take them, not as serious as the Cavs. But I just think at some point talent plays a role where just like we just have way more talent than you do. And talent is going to outweigh anything to where like, yeah, you can push us around or try to like score and play hard defense, but it just like Tatum and Brown should be like, what are you guys doing? And just take over the game. Like Paolo will probably have a good game or whatnot here and there, but what is Suggs going to beat you? Is Wagner going to beat you? Is Wendell Carter, Jonathan Isaac, Joe Ingles off the bench? Like, are these guys going to beat you? No, like they shouldn't. That's why I'm like, what are you going to say?
4 out of 7. Not 4 out of 7.
No way. And even like you live in Florida, right? Is there like a ton of Orlando Magic fans down there in Florida?
Well, I'm in Miami, so no. But even the past couple of years, I've gone to games in Orlando, and I mean, like you see the jerseys, but like I don't think a lot of them are big fans. Like they're not sitting down watching every games. Like they go to the games with the family. There's people on vacation because Orlando is Disney, and it's like something they do, and they buy the shirts from the store that still have the tags on them, as opposed to Heat fans that also do that. But Florida is a different type of sports market. There's a lot of transplants down here. The teams, didn't start till the 90s or late 80s. So you don't have, the generations of fans like you do with like Boston or New York or even Los Angeles, where it's like they grew up with that team and their parents grew up with that team. So you don't have quite the diehard level of fans. But yeah, so I mean, I think they get the home court advantage from, they're a youthful team. So when they're at home, everyone's cheering for them. It's almost kind of like, how role players play better at home. The whole team kind of does. That's why they're tough at home. Against a Cavs team that's not, I don't think it's mentally tough or as veteran laden, but I don't think that would affect the Celtics. So they don't bother me. With Cleveland, I will say the strength of their team being their backcourt scoring and Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. The strength of our team defensively is our backcourt defense with Derek White and Drew Holiday. So those are big guards. Like Derek White and Drew Holiday are 6'4" and 6'5". Donovan Mitchell is like 6'1", maybe 6'2". Darius Garland's a generous 6 feet. So I think they could have trouble getting their shots. Now they're both very quick. They're shifty. They may be able to get by them, and then not having Porzingis waiting for them at the rim could play a factor in this. But like, I don't think their strength is going to affect us because of the defensive guards that we do have. So I think either way, it goes 5 games.
So the only thing that I'm worried about, as you mentioned up a good point, is offensive and defensive rebounds. I think the Cavs might have an advantage on us on the boards if Mobley and Allen are on the floor at the same time. Now, obviously, our team is, Tatum's about 6'8", 6'9", Brown 6'7". Like we can, grab boards, but when you have 2 7-footers on the floor with no KP and just Al, I think you just worried that you're going to get beat on the glass a lot, and that can create, transition points for the Cavs and whatnot. And I think that's the only thing that you worry about without KP being out there. But, those are just you're nitpicking issues at this point, just to try to find a way for the Celtics to, do well against or like try to like beat the Cavs or try to like limit these options that the Cavs could have for you. But I do want to move to probably the biggest story in the Eastern Conference besides, the Magic taking the Cavs or Philly potentially taking the Knicks to a 7-game series is the Bucks, Heat, and 76ers are all out of round 1 and they're out of the playoffs, which, in years past, those 3 teams are necessarily like like along with Boston, those are your 4 juggernaut teams. And for all 3 of those to be out by round 1 is really significant to what the Celtics want to do. Now, obviously, Bucks are hurt. 2 main stars are out. Heat, again, hurt, out. And 76ers, who knows how healthy Joel Embiid is. And that team, in my eyes at least, they never really had the horses to compete with teams that are really good in the East. And now they're out. What are your thoughts on those teams being out so early?
So I think it's 3 different things for those 3 teams. I know we lump them in together because they're supposed to be, kind of the beast of the East. And in the past they have, I mean, Philly's not a beast of the East, but I mean, every year they at least look good on paper. And they did look really good this season up until Embiid was hurt. I think their ceiling, if they were healthy, and I even told you this, is the second best team in the East if they were healthy. Joel Embiid's never healthy. It's incredible what he can do on one leg when he's barely moving around and half his face is paralyzed from the Bell's palsy that he has. But that team, it's like that was such a good series with the Knicks. So you're almost kind of hoping it went 7, and which is why I told you I wanted Miami round 1. Even with Jimmy Butler, I think Philly's better than Miami. They had much more talent, and that could push you further. I didn't think Philly was going to beat us, but I just think Miami was an easier matchup. I don't know why Embiid. I get it; he's playing through an injury, but he's always playing through an injury. Like some of it's the shape he puts himself in. Some of it's the flailing and flopping he does on every single play that increases the injury risk and fatigue. But the guy can never stay healthy. But he just gets a complete pass that he's been in the league for a decade now, and he hasn't even made a conference finals. So there's that. With Miami, this is why you need to take the regular season more seriously. I know their fans talk about, playoff Jimmy and the regular season doesn't matter. But if they actually cared about the regular season and just lost, 3-4 less games, they wouldn't have been playing in that play-in. And then Jimmy Butler doesn't get hurt. And then you're not playing, the juggernaut Boston Celtics in round 1. So instead, you're maybe a 4 or 5 seed. Maybe you're playing Orlando. Maybe you're playing Cleveland, and you have a healthy Jimmy. And that way, you win a round, you build some momentum. Who knows where that carries you from there? I think that team needs to make major changes. As Dan Levertard said, the Celtics ended the Heat as we know them. Like, they're just not good enough. Even with Jimmy Butler, sorry, Heat fans, they weren't winning this year. They weren't beating the Celtics. Like, I think it still would have been 5 games. Every one of the Celtics victories, they were up by 30 points before they lost interest. So I don't think the team is good enough as constituted. Like, the whole, Heat culture, like, not the dirty parts, but like the, developing undrafted players and role players and playing, collectively above the individual talent. Like, you need more talent. You just need more talent. So I think Bam's the only one that, like, is for sure back. They'll probably give Jimmy the money because I don't know what the alternative is, but you need more talent. And then with Milwaukee, I mean, injuries, of course, played a huge role into it. Like, not to take away from Giannis, like, that definitely affected the series. But they struggled with Indiana all year in games Giannis did play. Like, that was a team that was a bad matchup because Milwaukee is an older team. They're a slower team, and they're not a great defensive team. And Indiana is a young, like, high run, like, fast-paced team that can shoot the ball, that can score the ball. And so even with Giannis, I don't know if the Milwaukee wins that series, but Milwaukee was not the same boat as Boston. Like, I know before the season, everyone was either picking Milwaukee or Boston, and, they're like, well, how are you going to stop Dame and Giannis? Like, that team didn't look good or right the whole season. Yeah, they were they were the 3rd seed, finished the game back at the 2nd seed. They finished 15 games back of us, and the times they beat us this year, like, we beat them handily the 2 games in Boston where they got closer at the end, but they had, the outcome was never on a night where we're playing a back-to-back in a different city after an overtime game, 5th game in 7 nights. And they took that as, well, we're better than the Celtics now. And then at the end of the year when the Celtics had nothing left to play for, and that was the game that Giannis hurt himself at the end. So I didn't view Milwaukee as a threat. I think Milwaukee had a higher ceiling than those other teams because, of course, anytime you have, top 5 player in the NBA and Giannis, I don't know where you want to put Dame right now, but, he's still a lethal scorer. So I think Milwaukee could have tested us because that's a team where if you don't come with it, they could beat you because they have the star power. But I think going forward, they need to get younger. They need to get more athletic. I think Brook Lopez is definitely on the other side of the hill right now. He just looks so slow. And if he's not hitting shots, he becomes a huge liability on the floor. Yeah, I just think they need I don't think they're going to move, obviously, Giannis. I think they're going to keep Dame. Middleton, showed me a lot in this series, but, like, how often can you count on him? He was the healthy one in this series, the healthiest of the 3. So are you counting on that every year? So I don't really know where you go with Milwaukee. I just know they can't bring that exact same team back because you're going to get the same result. What do you think, Jason?
I mean, when you look at Milwaukee, right, I don't really know if they, what their draft capital is or what they got for
They have
draft.
none.
But, like, it's almost like the Suns. Aren't you forced to bring back the same team? Like, they're paying Giannis, they're paying Dame. They just re-upped Lopez, right? Because he was going to go to Houston, right? He was going to go to Houston, then they upped their offer and they kept him. Wasn't that just this last offseason where Lopez was a free agent?
Yeah, so, I mean, he is signed, but, I mean, he's definitely movable. I would have to check the numbers. I want to say he's making around $20 million a year. I think if you're not going to trade one of their big 3, I even think you entertain everybody outside of Giannis for the right deal. But I think
Yeah.
you have to move Lopez. You should move Bobby Portis. I think Jay Crowder needs to no longer be on that team. I think he's kind of useless at this point. Like, you need younger athletic players. Like, in a series against Boston, they had nobody to defend them, like the Jays, who would just
Yeah.
tear them up time and time again. Like, I honestly think that series would have gone 5. Buck fans won't want to hear that, but the Celtics are just a bad matchup for them. Like, they weren't going to play them on a back-to-back. With even rest, we're just better than that team. Yeah, Giannis is an all-time great player. Dame can have all-time great performances. Maybe they steal a game or two. They weren't winning that series. And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of Bucks fans, especially their super fan Nathan, is coming to that realization that there is changes that need to be made. But yeah, I mean, they'll have the summer. I think it's going to be a very interesting offseason for a lot of teams. Like you said, with Phoenix, it is hard to make deals because you're kind of locked into the roster you have. Phoenix is in the worst position. They have no draft picks for the next 8 years
Gotta run it
outside
back.
of a couple of second rounders. So I mean, you have to trade KD or Booker if you want anything of value. Bradley Beal, when Perk was like, "Oh, we should trade Jaylen Brown for him," it's just he has no value right now with that contract, and he still has a no trade clause.
I mean, when you look at Bradley Beal, I think why people wanted him in Boston so much was because Tatum and him have
Connection to
such a
JT,
great,
yeah.
connection and whatnot. So it's like they could probably play well together. And, I'm not gonna be here and say that can't happen because, God forbid the Celtics don't win this year. You never know what's gonna happen, So you never know. And
I
obviously
wouldn't
Beal,
take Bradley Beal over anybody in our starting lineup.
you wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't trade Derek White for him. Drew Holiday's the only one you can think of, but then that kills you defensively.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to really dive into his numbers. Obviously, being in the East Coast, I don't get a lot of Phoenix Suns games. It's not like I'm watching them all the time, but yeah, probably wouldn't now. But if he ever were to accept a 6-man bench role, I'd be all over that. Are you kidding me? Bradley Beal off the bench? Are you kidding?
Not in his current contract though. Maybe in 3 years when his contract comes out, he could fill the Pritchard role when Pritchard's getting the bag somewhere else. But that'd be on a vet min.
Yeah, to your point about Brook Lopez, so he signed a 2-year, pretty hefty extension at 2 years, $48 million. He had a $25 million cap hit this year, and the next year he has a $23 million cap hit. So that's a lot of money, or it's a decent amount of money for a guy that is on the other side of the hill and can't really give you that much unless he's a 3-point sniper, which some nights he is. Sometimes he went 6 for 8 the other night in one of the games in the series. So if he's not hitting his shots, he's kind of tough, but he did have 20 last night, though, I believe. Didn't he? He had 20. So I don't know. I mean, you get what you give, I guess. I don't know. It's tough. Also, too, with that series, Bobby Portis can't get ejected in that game when they're down Giannis and Dame, too. I know we can sit and, shit on the Bucks, but Portis has to you're down Dame and Giannis. You can't get ejected in the first 7 minutes of the game and leave it that's on him, So I don't know. Plus, Pat Bev throwing the ball at the crowd last. You see that video going around? They hit the girl in the head.
That, and then this interview after the game where he's like, "Don't interview me if you're not subscribed to my podcast." The guy's such a clown. Just be thankful with the Celtics, besides how good they are, that we don't have guys that act like that. We don't have guys that act like Bobby Portis. We don't have guys that act like Pat Bev. They may be like, "Oh, the Celtics are soft." No, you just got punks on these other teams. Bobby Portis is such an idiot for getting himself thrown out. Okay, you pushed him, he pushed you back. You slap him in the head. What do you think was going to happen? That's a game that they needed him to step up. That would be I know the Celtics have more good players than the Bucks, but that'd be okay, Tatum and Brown are out, and we really need you to step up, like Derek White or Kristaps Porzingis, and then they fucking slap somebody in the head. It's just a really unintelligent play, and they have several players like that.
Also, for the Heat, too, I think they're the team that you have to watch this summer because Pat Riley is not going to stand pat this summer. I think Hero's going to be on the move. I think that Jovic kid that was starting, he's going to be on the move too. And I think Jaime Jaquez, maybe. It depends who they're chasing. There's rumors that, maybe they were going to go after KD or something, but they have to get somebody to pair with Jimmy. They can't just keep running Jimmy and Bam every year. I mean, teams are going to have
Jimmy can be your best player. He's going to be 35 years old. I think you need to get somebody that's younger that Jimmy can be the number 2 too, because then you have Bam as a number 3. You're starting to actually put something together. I think Jovic and Jaime Jaquez, they definitely show some potential. Now you see how other guys outside of the Miami organization, it's almost kind of like the Patriots with their coaching tree, where it's everybody looks good, in a certain system, then they go off on their own, and it's they're not successful. So, and
Yeah.
then you look at like, Gabe Vincent, who got the bag from the Lakers, and he's just been a bum all year. He had, he sold his soul for that series last year.
Yeah.
And you have guys like Caleb Martin playing over their head, which Caleb Martin, by the way, besides the dirty antics that he does, it was nice to see, Tatum, dunk in his face the other day.
Yeah.
But it's like every time he shoots the ball, he looks like he's gonna break his arm. Like I don't even know how he can shoot the ball, but they need to pick a direction, because if you're going in it with the Jimmy window, then you package up the young guys and you get that third star. I mean, if you want to call Bam a star, then you get the third star and have Jimmy be your second best player. Otherwise, if you don't want to give Jimmy that extension, you move him. And then you go into a younger timeline. You build around Bam, and then you get somebody else more around Bam's timeline, and you get younger pieces to pair. Because I think Jaime Jaquez could be a good player in limited opportunity. I like what I saw out of Jovic. So I think they do have some good young pieces, but they need to pick a direction. Like, you can't stand pat with the team. I think what happened to the Heat last year, that miracle fluke run that like is out of the norm, is it was not good for the organization in the long term or the fan base, because it created unrealistic expectations. I know the fans don't make decisions for the team, but it was just annoying all year. They were like, well, we don't care about the regular season. We're going to be the 8th seed, and then we'll just decide to care, because we just don't care during the regular season. In the postseason, we'll care, and then we'll just go straight to the finals again from the 8th seed. Like, that's not a norm. That doesn't happen. And from the ownership, Pat Riley felt, we have enough. Like, this team's good enough. And so they don't play in the regular season again. They don't take it seriously. They end up in the same position. Jimmy's hurt now. And so hopefully for their fan base, Pat Riley isn't like, well, if we just had Jimmy Butler, we would have been fine. And let's just run it back. Like, you can't run that team back. They're perennially like a mid team, like a 7-8 seed. Maybe their ceiling's like a 6. Like, they need new blood in there.
So they actually have some pretty decent free agents that they got to make decisions on. So one is your favorite Caleb Martin, he's a free agent. Kevin Love, Kevin Love, and then Haywood Highsmith, and then Delon Wright, who had one of the best shooting nights I think in probably his whole basketball career in Game 2. Who I think he went 5 for 8 from a 3-point line, if I'm not mistaken. So they have some decisions that they have to make. 2 of their bigger role players in Highsmith and Martin are going to be up, and they got to figure out what they want to do. And I'm just worried that Pat Riley's going to do some crazy stuff this offseason to try to make that team better. But in the meantime, like, he's probably going to force it too, right? If he's going to go by the Jimmy window, like you're saying, is he going to trade Jaquez and Jovic? But like, who's available? Like, even if
they could try to get Donovan Mitchell, they could go after KD, like something like that.
Even if you get Donovan Mitchell, which the Austin, who we had on last podcast, he's a big fan of them trading for Donovan Mitchell. Okay, you get Donovan Mitchell. Is that 3 of Butler, Mitchell, and Bam going to even compete with us? Like, I don't know. I don't think
Heat fans will tell you that it would, but then you get a player in Donovan Mitchell who's a liability defensively. Now the Heat, depending on who they give up and what the rest of their roster looks like, might be able to compensate for that, because they do have a lot of, defensive-minded players on that team. But, we'll see. I mean, sounds good on paper, but we'll see if he leaves. We'll see what the trade offers are. Pat Riley actually has to understand you got to give fair value. Pat Riley right now kind of reminds me of Danny Ainge at the end of his time here in Boston, where he wasn't going to trade with you unless he was an obvious win for the team. He liked the team he had, whereas Brad Stevens will make trades that, like, on the surface, the opposing fans will be like, oh, the Celtics got fleeced, where in the end, people are like, oh, how the Celtics allowed to do this? Because he'll give up fair value to get the player he wants. Every single trade Brad Stevens has made, when it happened, a good amount of people, like a large percentage, said that we lost a trade. What are we doing? Including the Derek White trade, where we gave up Josh Richardson, Romeo Langford, and a first-round pick. There was articles how we lost that trade. People are like, oh, he gave up way too much. The initial reaction to Porzingis for Smart was like, how could you trade Marcus Smart for him? Porzingis can't stay healthy. Probably not the right timing to bring that one up, but even still, like, he's going to be okay. The Drew Holiday trade, when they saw we give up, Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, people were saying we got fleeced on that. You have to give up value when you have your scouting department and you know who the right players are. Get the player. Don't worry so much about, like, every single piece you have, because if you fall attached to everything you have, you're never going to improve. The East is better now, especially the Celtics at the top, who they're not going anywhere. They're a young team. Most of them are signed long term. They're not, outside of Porzingis, they're not like injury risk type players. Like, if you want to compete in the East, you have to make significant changes.
Yeah, no, I agree. They're going to have to figure something out and what they want to do to be able to compete. But I do want to move to our last topic, and that's, what is the biggest task left for the Celtics in the East right now? To me, there's only one obvious answer, and that's the Knicks. The Knicks look really good right now, and I know they faced the banged up 76ers, but Brunson is a bad man. That dude is I'm not gonna say he's unstoppable, but he's so good right now. And if the Celtics go up against the Knicks in the conference finals, I think that's gonna be a great series, at least 6 games. I think the Celtics have like the height and the scoring ability, obviously at all 5 positions, to be able to beat them, especially if you have KP, because I think KP absolutely hates the Knicks and he'll do anything to beat them. So I think we have that advantage. But I mean, when you watch them against the 76ers, I know every game was close, but you got to give your hats off to the Knicks. They did a great job, and I think for us, they're probably the last test to get to the finals, if I had to guess.
No, I mean they're a tough team for sure. It's been from afar. It's been nice to see what they've been able to do. I mean, they still do have to get by Indiana. You can't just look past Indiana because I mean, Indiana offensively when they're humming is like they're almost unstoppable on the offensive side of the ball. But if we get to the Knicks, I mean, I think that'd be great. Boston New York rivalry, getting the games in TD Garden and Madison Square Garden. I think it'll be cinema. Like it'll be must see TV. I think it could go 7. I think it could be over in 5. If I had to guess, I would say 5, maybe 6. I just think we're too talented for them, especially now they don't have Bogdanovich, they don't have Julius Randle, so they are missing a lot of pieces. You do have guys that are, they're mentally tough, and especially the Villanova connection between them. Like they're another team. It's almost gonna be like Miami in the sense that like you have to beat them. They're not. You're not gonna just show up and intimidate them because of all the players that you have. One thing going against them though is they're playing their guys a lot of minutes. Like they're playing their guys like 46 minutes a game. That's always been a knock on Tibbs that he overuses players. We'll see what they even look like by the time they get to us. Whereas our series could be over in 5. They may go 6 or 7 with Indiana, where they have the guys playing all those minutes. Where our series, as it goes on, you're going to have that fatigue factor. The legs are going to get heavier and more tired. That the shots might not be falling. And like outside of maybe Dante DiVincenzo from 3 and Jalen Brunson from like the mid range, the rest of the team is not like knockdown shooters at all. Now, what you worry about with them is on the glass as well with Hartenstein, especially if Porzingis isn't right, and him getting muscled around there. But he hates that team, like you said. He spaces that floor. He's going to pull Hartenstein out of the lane, which is going to create driving opportunities for everybody else. And if Porzingis is hitting his shot from deep, and he's right and he's healthy, I don't see that team beating us either. So biggest test, yes, of the 4 teams left, I would say them for sure. But if the Celtics are serious and they're who we think they are, they shouldn't even see a Game 7 in that series.
No, I completely agree. I just think when it comes up us versus the Knicks, I think it's, 2 just cornerstone franchises going at it. And I just think we just have a lot of pieces that they don't to get it done. But like you said, they run their guys into I think Brunson in these games averages about 42 to 43 minutes a game. Like he's playing 85, 90% of the game. It's actually ridiculous. He's out there, he plays almost the entire first quarter. He gets 2 minutes in the second quarter where he rests and he's back out and he plays majority of the second half. That dude doesn't sit down, and it's wild. But like you said, we'll see what they look like when they get to us, if they get to us.
People are comparing his numbers to Tatum. He's playing 45, 46 minutes a game, whereas Tatum's playing 36 minutes a game. He's taking 30 plus shots a game, where Tatum's taking 12 to 15. You have to have context in there as well, where in the short term, it's probably gonna give him a better chance to win if Jalen Brunson's on the floor. But fatigue factors in, over the long term. And the more time you're in there, the increased risk of injury that can happen. But given the teams that are left, I think the NBA is definitely rooting for, Boston and the Knicks in the conference finals. 100%. So I can't see the Cavs or the Magic spoiling that for us. I think Indiana will be tough for them. I'll take the Knicks in 6 over the Pacers.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at Tatum only played 32 minutes in game 5 against now granted we did blow
he came
them
out in the third and they were up by so much he didn't have to go back in.
Maybe because and Brunson played 44 last night. So I don't know. I guess you can't compare because the games weren't close or whatnot, but it is what it is. Do you have any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
So since we won't be doing a show before we find out, who the next opponent is, Hopefully the Celtics, regardless if they get Orlando or Cleveland, can take care of business in the first 2 home games, so we don't have to stress like we did after Game 2 against Miami. Now, granted, I don't think any realistic person, unless people that really hate the Celtics, thought the Celtics were going to lose that series, and I still don't think people were going to think they're going to lose this series. But just take care of business at home. You've been dominant all year. Don't play with your food. It could be a very similar situation if they get Cleveland in round 1 on Sunday, where it's like Miami played a Friday night game in the play-in and then came to Sunday afternoon in Boston and got their wheels blown off. I think something similar could happen tonight. Cleveland plays a night game in Orlando tonight. It would be an afternoon game Sunday. Hopefully we can start out the series strong 2-0 and then, have things looking good, especially since we might have 4 days off between games 2 and 3.
Yeah, I agree. I think the main thing for me is take care of business against these lower level teams. Don't play with your food. Take care of them in 4 and 5 games. You can allow the outlier because every team is going to have their night to beat you or whatnot, just like the Heat did. You take care of business, you get healthy, and you get ready for what you think is going to be a dogfight in the conference finals versus the Knicks, because it's not going to be easy. I still don't think it's going to be easy. I know they have the talent or whatnot, but I think the Knicks are playing inspiring basketball right now, and I just, we can beat them. I'm just saying, just don't, I know the first 2 rounds are going to be lighter rounds, and then you jump into a round, oh my God, like you're playing a team that's pretty good. Like, it's almost like, oh, okay, now we got to play better or got to play, harder or whatnot. Just get through the next series, and then we'll worry about the next one. We got to worry about them. But I think that's my main thing right now. Just healthy and just don't play with your food. That's what I got. But you guys can follow us on Twitter at DynastyProud18. We post a lot on there, whatnot. And then again on BSCN_617 on Twitter and on YouTube. We will see you guys in the next.